Hey Math 1B and Geometry, this is Mr. Owsley coming at you with a new video. It's all about writing linear equations. What I'm going to be doing is giving you guys 2 points that the line actually crosses through on the graph. I'm not going to give you the graph and I'm not going to ask you to graph it. I'm going to ask you to write the equation that's specific to this whole structure of y equals mx plus b. All right? So it's pretty straightforward. 3 steps every single time. The first step is all about the m. Okay, so I think you guys have seen a formula for m in the past. So I'm just going to give it to you right now. It's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. This is basically giving us the rise over the run of a line. Okay, so when you subtract the y values, here's the y-axis, that represents the rise. When you subtract the x values, it represents the run. So this is basically the rise over run in a different format. So step 1, find m. So m is totally tied to these 2 points here. You've got 6 comma 5, which the x1 is 6 and the y1 is 5. Remember, the left coordinate is the x coordinate. The right coordinate is the y coordinate. And then 3, 8 is just another xy. x2, y2. Now this should do a pretty good job of guiding you for at least the slope portion. M is equal to y2, which is 8, minus y1, which is 5. So that's the numerator of the fraction, the top. On the bottom, you've got x2, so you're going to plug in 3 into that fraction, minus x1, which is 6. Simplify the top and bottom, you get 3 over negative 3. And then for these equations, you can just simplify that fraction, and if it's a whole number, just keep it as a whole number. M equals negative 1. So that's the first step to this. Always find the slope first. And then that gives us a piece of this puzzle right here. We know that it's now y equals negative 1x plus b. See the m? It's now negative 1. Step 2. I'm going to say pick x, y, and plug in. Now, why do we do that? Well, first of all, we know that when x equals 6, y has to equal 5. Or when x equals 3, y has to equal 8. If we plug into x and into y, then we have enough information to actually get b by itself, which is sort of like a key part of finding an equation of a line every single time. So when I say pick x, y, and plug in, that just means pick a point. Either one looks okay, so I'm going to pick x equals 6 and y equals 5. Once I do that, then I plug in right here. So the y is 5. The x is 6. There's multiplication happening between the m and the x, so I'm going to have to multiply right there. Put a dot or put parentheses, and then plus b. At this point, you should solve the equation using like order of operations. Multiplication here has to happen before you do anything with the b. So negative 1 times 6 is negative 6 plus b. And if you remember how to solve basic equations, you add or subtract to get the variable by itself. This negative 6 needs to leave, so you'd add 6 to both sides. That gives us positive 11. Well, I don't think we can see there, so I'm just going to go off to the side here. B equals 11. All right, so step 1. M. Step 2, plug in for x and y, find your b value. And now step 3 is just bringing it all together and writing the finalized version of your equation. So the final equation, it was y equals mx plus b. Now, y equals negative 1 x plus 11. All right. So now that you've seen sort of the step-by-step version of it, pause the video and try number 2 on your own. All right, you've unpaused it. Let's see what it is. All right, so number 2 is 10 comma 3 is our first point, negative 5 comma negative 3 is our second. Step 1, you're going to be plugging it into the slope formula. So I'm just going to label these x1, y1, x2, y2. Negative 3, y2 minus 3, y1. Goes on the top. Y is always on top. Negative 5 is my x2. Positive 10 is my x1. All right. Simplify those. A negative subtracting means it's going further left on the number line. So that's going to be negative 6 over negative 15. Now that simplifies, all right? Both the top and the bottom are negative, which means the overall result's going to be positive. And 6 and 15 both divide 3. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is 5. All right, so m is equal to 2/5. Step 2. You know what? I'm actually going to structure this a little bit differently. I'm going to say you're going to pick x, you're going to pick y, and then we're just going to identify what the m is here so that we can very, very clearly say, here's all the information we need, and it's all going in this equation here. So which of these points would be more convenient to pick for x and y? I don't know. I think it's clear that if you want positive numbers to work in your equation, you're going to have fewer mistakes with negatives. So I'm going to pick x equals 10 and y equals 3. M we found was 2/5. At which point we just plug in for the y equals mx plus b. So the y is 3. The m is 2/5. The x, multiplication, times 10, and then plus b. Yeah, if you got a calculator, feel free to use it on the 2/5 times 10. But know that you guys do have the information to just multiply by 10 over 1. Fractions, you can just multiply straight across. 2 times 10 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5. So you get 20 divided by 5. Which ends up being 4. So you got 3 on the left-hand side. This is going to be 4, and you're still adding b to it. Subtract 4 from both sides, and that gives you your b value. Step 2 is complete. All right, last move. I'm going to take the 2 pieces of info that I found on step 1 and step 2 and plug it into my generic equation for y equals mx plus b. So y equals 2/5 x minus 1. That's my final answer. Let's try some more practice. Let's do number 3. And see if this is starting to make a little more sense. again, step 1, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Here's x1. Here's y1. Here's x2. Here's y2. Negative 20 minus 6 goes on top. Eight minus negative 5 goes on the bottom. Now this is where people start to get a little bit, they just start to make more mistakes than I think they normally would. Putting a minus negative indicates a plus. So try not to fall in that trap. Negative 20 minus 6 is negative 26. 8 minus negative 5 is 8 plus 5, which is 13. And then 13 is exactly half of 26. So 13 goes into 26 2 times. So m is negative 2. Step 2, this is the point at which we say pick your x, your y, and then you know what your m is. It's negative 2. You know, at this point, you can't really avoid the negative numbers. There's going to be an x that's negative here and a y that's positive versus an x that's positive and a y that's negative. I'm going to go with negative 5, 6 because they're smaller numbers. And they are going to be plugged into that formula. So 6 for the y, negative 2 for the m, negative 5 for the x, and then plus b. This is going to be positive 10 because a negative times a negative is a positive. And then we're going to subtract 10 from both sides. Step 2 is complete. We got negative 4 equals b. And then one final move. We take our structure and we plug in the m and the b into their appropriate places. All right, I hope you guys found that helpful. This is just the basics for solving, not really solving, but writing linear equations that go through 2 points. I'm going to make a second video of the last 3 examples in the notes. These 3 have just kind of like, I don't know if they're special cases, but one has a fraction, one has decimals, and one is, well, why don't you watch the video and see what number 3 is all about? I'm sorry, 4, 5, and 6.